Good morning. This is Dr. Bill White again with the American Orthodontic Society, and I want to talk with you some this morning about the mechanics of impacted teeth. I worked for several years trying to figure out the best thing that I could come up with for bringing impacted teeth into the mouth, and this is the result of what we did here, and it really works. It has a constant force. It's bringing the tooth in the same direction, and it is attached to the crown of the tooth, and it is something that I've never found a tooth that we couldn't pull into the mouth some way or another. Well, take that back. I found one that I couldn't do. It was right on top of another tooth. But it virtually handled any type of impacted tooth, whether it's a molar or bicuspid, but most of them are cuspid teeth. So let's get in with this and I'll show you. If you really take it apart, it's not as complicated as it seems like when you first start working with it. I'm going to start right in the middle of this and show you. And we've done these things on tapedots so you can see. Now this is an impacted cuspid that we've got up in here. In that line, bring it down, just a simple impaction. Now we go ahead and work the case up, and we've got a rectangular wire all the way around in the arch. And at the point we're bringing this tooth in, we want it slightly wider than the tooth. So we thread open coil spring onto the arch wire, and you spread enough spring to come out to something like this. Then you condense it back to the space between the brackets, right like that. And you can take a spool of that spray and just kind of twist it. Don't take it off the spool. The spool will be down here, and it'll be spinning around as you wind that spring onto your arch wire. You can put spring like that on any tooth or any space like this. Here you just take it, loosen your arch wire here, because you have to run an extra length to it, and then you compress it into the gap that you have, and it opens that tooth up. Now as it tends to open it, the tooth may have some play in it, and the points of it will go back like that. Sometimes you have to raise your arch wire right here and come back to the arch wire, and you come back this way, you come back to the arch wire. In other words, you pick this up, instead of this coming straight off from the arch wire, it'll come like this, and now as you push it in there, it'll end up being straight. So these are some little things you might not have caught on to. I'm not saying if you've been in this very long, you run into these things. All right, now we take the tooth that you're going to bring into the mouth, and we try to get as close to the tip of the tooth as we possibly can. And this may not be the closest you can get, but that's a little button, and we bonded it right onto the tooth right here. And before we bonded it on, we wound this little spring right here, or little piece of this wire, onto that little spool. Put it on there. Now this is 012 soft stainless steel wire. You have a piece of it going on like this, and then you just twist it down, and it'll make you'll end up with a kind of a twisted part of that wire down here, and you make a hook in that, or you just bend it up. Now I can hook something onto that hook right here and put about 2 or 3 or 4 pounds of force on it before it'll straighten that wire out. That's an 012 soft stainless steel wire. And everybody ought to have a spool of that, and you need a spool of 010 and one of 014 to do most anything you want to do with it. Now, many of you already have scaled, Dotrix gauge that you can pull on and measure what you want to put in there. So we hook up a piece of spring. I'm going to show you that, of close coil spring. You take a piece of close coil spring, it's so long out here, and you tip one end of it off so that you've got a kind of a deal like that at the end of it, and you tie a piece of 0.012 wire onto the end of that, and you wrap it around this molar tooth back here and twist that down so this spring is tied to this tooth down here underneath there where we're going to use it. Now I take a Dotrix gauge, which I'll have to show you later on. I don't have mine here with me. I take a Dotrix gauge and I pull that spring out to where it shows how many ounces we're going. This Dotrix gauge measures things by so many ounces, 16 ounces, and it'd be a pound of force. And sometimes we put a pound of force on here, but you measure, say, 3/4 of a pound of force, and you pull the spring to this point right here. Now, when you make this arch wire that goes along here, your regular arch wire, you come up here and make a loop in it where you want this tooth to erupt to. And that will pull that tooth in that direction. And then you come back in here and you take some dental floss and put in the other end of this, and you've got floss coming down and coming out like that. And you take one strand of that dental floss and you pull and tie a knot in this spring where you pull the knot up to the point where it weighs 3/4 of a pound, and that's how many pounds will come in. Now we take the dental floss, go up here and hook it around this and come back down and tie it there. And we tie that dental floss. This is waxed dental floss. And this dental floss slides across this wire with almost no resistance at all. And if you get a 3/4 of a pound pull on this spring, there'll be 3/4 of a pound pull on this tooth right up here and pulling it down to this point. All right? This has an effect on the whole arch wire. When you put this in here and you're pulling this down, it actually picks these teeth up just slightly, but not much. And then it pulls this tooth into this space right here. And it gets, let me erase some of this now. I don't know whether I can erase. I'll just have to erase the whole thing. Now, when this tooth gets down here, this hook that we built, and it gets and bumps in the way, so we cut it off and then bend the hook back up here. And now we hook it here and bring it down. When that gets there, you take that off. And when it gets to there, then you just hook onto your button and you pull the tooth right on down in here with this same force that you're pulling, and you hook it up, and you come back in say a week, and you look at it again, or 2 weeks, and there'll be the same force pulling on this tooth as when you stop, and it's going in the same direction. And I've never seen a tooth that you just gradually, it'll move it right on down in here. Now when you get it down here, you've got to take this off, and you have to turn or rotate the tooth, get it into place, and then you've got it in the space, and now you've got a little extra space. Now I can catch hold to this spring and put a hold up here and just pull on it, and I can pull that spring off the tooth, and that'll let this close back on the impacted tooth. Now, this may sound complicated, but if you do this a while, this is unusually good to take care of things like this. You go in the same direction, the same force, and it's constant, and it'll last. This spring will keep up that force for months if you want to. And if that's not enough, you can pull that spring and activate it to this point right here. You can have a whole pound of force on that spring right there, pulling this tooth down in here. Now this spring and this force right here will tend to pick these teeth up slightly, but it has to pick the whole thing up. If you had any problem with it, you could come down and hook onto the bottom arch right here. But you don't usually have any problem like that. You pull it down. Now you can get it down in here and put a bracket on the tooth and hook to the bracket and pull it on down to where you get this bracket right off into the wire. Then you run a flexible wire in it, get it down closer, and now you can hook it up to the rectangular wire. So this is the steps that you go through to deal with an impacted tooth. And if you want to pull it in from the root, if the tooth is up in the roof of the mouth, you can pull it in there too. Let me get it. Well, I got jumped over the deal here. This is from another direction, and we hook the spring up here. There's the deal, the dental floss. You separate it, run one part of it, hook it around that, you come back out, and now you pull this wax floss, and it'll stretch this spring out till you go to where you've measured it with a doctor's gauge, and you say you put 1 pound of force on this tooth at this point, and you pull it out there and tie your dental floss at this point, and it'll be virtually the same thing. It'll be pulling on that tooth with 1 pound of force, and you tie it up 1 week, and 2 weeks later or 3 weeks, it'll still be a pound of force. Now at the same time we're rotating this tooth, we put some elastic chain on it, and then pull in here, wrap it around this tooth, and have dental floss on it. Put it on this your bracket right here, and it will turn that tooth in this direction. It'll turn it around in that direction. In other words, just moving it around, and it'll be up against this molar right there. All right, let's go ahead and show some other advantages. Now this is waxed dental floss, and it will slip over this arch wire. You make a little loop in this wire, and then you come out here, you put your spring can wind around that loop, and you're opening this gap at the same time, so that when you get the tooth there, you want the gap just slightly bigger than the tooth. so that you can move its tooth around or rotate or whatever you need to do to it. And then when you're through, you pull this spring out and the thing will close back up on the sides. The tooth will come in contact. Now when you're rotating one, you need a little gap in here anyway. The elastic chain kind of works like a separator in there and makes some spring pressure to get it through. All right, well, I'm going to erase that and we'll go to the next. Now here's the way it looks from the inside, you see. Let's say we've got two. This was going up on the outside over here. We got an impaction out here. We've got this impacted inside this area. So we bond something on it. It's even better if you bond it right on the tip of the tooth, if you can get something like that. Now you twist this this O12 wire onto that tooth and have it, make it long enough, like if you pull this tooth out of a hole here you've dug up in the palate to get to that tooth to bond this. You get whatever you're going to bond, you put it on there, make the hook exactly like you want it, and have it ready so when you get this etched and washed and dried, you put a good bit of bonding material on it and push it up in there, and the hook is at the right place to hook your dental floss to the hook. Now if you pull this out, and now we get the hook coming over, saying like here, we can cut that hook off and make it go back here again and pull it on the rest of the way. Now this is where you're coming in here with the arch wire and you make that little circle and come back over here. Or you can kind of tilt it and make it where it's in one plane in here, and here you're rotating some teeth, and that just gives you some idea where how you can use this thing. And it works. And it took several years before I could figure out something that had all the things you needed. You needed a constant force on it. It's got it. You needed a position to close, where you can close the space together, and you've got it here. And we'll pull the tooth in there. You can rotate it in that direction in there. And you need it where the patient doesn't have to do anything to it. I mean, you just hook it up. They come back and see you in a week or 2 weeks, and then we'll change it and just leave it alone. And this pulls on there constantly. And I've pulled some terrific impactions from up in the roof of the mouth out to the outside, and you get on it where you can pull it properly. This old deal used to wrap around the neck of the tooth. We never do that. That's the worst place you can hook one. You hook it as close to the tip of the tooth. It's like pulling a boat across the lake. And then it'll pull it on in there. This is not as good as I would like. Really, we should have had the hook over here, bringing it in there better. Now let's see. I'm going to go to the next slide. Here now we're showing the wire that we wind on here. This is just one wire, and you wind it on there. You loosen one end of this and wind the wire way out to here. Push it back and crowd it in there, and you can put more pressure out here than you do here, or more back here than you do up there, even though you don't cut the spring. You just leave the spring in there, and it'll open this gap while you're getting ready and pulling the tooth into the mouth. And as far as I can tell, this is covers everything you need in an appliance, or something to get the teeth in the place. But people seem to look at it, and I think they get scared off of it and just haven't been using it much. And I want you to try it. Really try this. This is the best way I know to put pressure on impacted teeth and bring them into the mouth. I'm going to go through another deal. There's the spring coming down. Another view of it. There's the deal in the roof of the mouth. You can do that. Here's the springs. This is a closed coil spring right here. And the spring size of wire is 010. In other words, that's the size of the wire. The lumen in the spring is 0.3, let me see, that's 0.36 wire. In other words, the circle of the spring is 0.36 wire, like that. And now that's Unitech. I don't mean to be selling it, but you can use any spring you want to in there. You take a closed coil, stick a blade in there and bend it out, and now you've got an opening out here that you hook to. Do the same thing back here, tie a wire 12 thousandths and tie that onto the motor, and you hook your Doctrix gauge to this, and it'll tell you how much force and where you want to put the tooth. And so that's the way we do that part of it. Now there's the, we stick this is a gyrback plier, I think, with a tiny little tip. Just stick it into the end of that spring, and you bend it out like this, like here, see? And you bend something out on this end where you can run a wire in there and tie that, and this is where you're going to put the dental floss on the other end of the spring. Now there, we put this is 012 wire on through the end of the spring here. And the dental floss went out this way. That's waxed dental floss. I hope I get that across. So you got to have the wax so it slides and has very little resistance. When you go around the corner like that and it's waxed, there'll be just virtually the same force going this way as you have on the dental floss going that way, like that. Now when you take this and tie it around the bracket with the spring at the end of the bracket, like that. Now I think we show that up here a little bit better. Alright. First, I take the 012 and put just a single knot in it, right there. Now you take these two ends and put them around. You start with the bracket. I like to have the bracket up here and lay the spring on it and tie that around that so that you get a better length to your spring, like that. Now, here we've tied the spring onto the bracket back here at the back, and we're pulling on this to show you how much you can pull that all the way out there, and you get a pound of force on it any time you want to. Alright, there it is on the back. Now we tie it this way, and now we're going to bring this forward, you see, so it'll be pulling over a longer distance up here where we hook it to the impaction. Now you can see that. Now here's a Doctrix gauge. I have one somewhere around here, but I don't know where it is. I haven't used it in years. This is like a fish scale, and it's got every 4 rounds in here, and 1 round is an ounce of force, and it has 16 ounces. You can measure pushing it into something, or you can hook the other end and pull on it something, and it's put the spring in there doing the same thing. So everybody ought to get them a Doctrix gauge. Now here, if we push, and I push this against something, and this is 1 ounce, 2, 3, 4. Now 4 ounces, there's a double deal. One, and then another 4. That'll be 5, 6, 7, 8, and you've got another deal. 9, 10, 11, 12, and you've got the deal. And then 12, that'd be 13, 14, 15, 16. In other words, if you push this and bear this spring up to this point right here, it takes 1 pound of force to push this back to here. So you can measure any part of this. Now you're an ounce, like it's 30 something ounces, is not exactly, but if you're dealing with in that fashion, but this shows this in pounds, and everybody needs a Doctrix gauge. You can put exactly so many ounces of force on those teeth with that spring, and they come back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and it'll be virtually the same amount, except if your tooth moves toward that to some extent, the amount of pressure reduces as you get there. It's not that the spring got tired and got out there and quit helping you. Now that's the Doctrix gauge. There's the hook end. Now you hook in, and when you pull it in, that first ring comes out, that's an ounce of force coming out of that deal. Let me see if we, all right. I hook it to this spring right here, and I pull it till it's got, there's 4, 8, and this is 12 ounces of force to right over here, and I pull this out to this point, there's 12 ounces of force here. I've got dental floss on here now. I double that floss, go through this hole up here, hook it on this, come back out, and I've got the 2 ends of the floss, and I tie a knot in it, and I can tie that and it'll slip, and it'll bring that spring right up to that point right there, and you've got 12 ounces of force, and it's going to be there next week, the week after that, and the week after that, unless somebody tears it up. But if the tooth moves from here down to here, it will be a shorter distance, so there'll be a reduction in this spring. Will kind of slip back, so it may be here. If this tooth moves in 2 millimeters, there'll be 2 millimeters off of here, and it won't be quite as much force on it when they get back in. But if the tooth doesn't move, it'll be the same pressure. But if you put very much pressure and those teeth don't move, you've got an ankylose tooth, and you have to get somebody to go in there, and an oral surgeon, somebody can break the thing loose to get the tooth down in position like that. Now let me erase that and see. Okay, here we hook this spring in, and we're going to pull on it. Now see, we've got the dental floss going through here and coming up through over on the other side. We're going to pull that to where we put the amount of force that we want to use in this tooth. We'll pull it out. Now I pulled it to this point right here, and I took one end of that floss, went up and hooked it, and the floss goes up and around that, comes out, and you've got this end, and now you take the 2 ends and tie about 3 knots in it so it'll hold. And then whatever this force you pull it up to there, there'll be virtually the same amount of force pulling this down the direction you want to go. It goes the direction, It's a constant pressure. The pressure will reduce slightly as the tooth moves toward the place, and you get it back every 2 to 3 weeks and retie that and put a new piece of floss on that. Now, if you want a little more force than that, the person can come in and take an elastic, hook it up here, come down around this, and go back and hook it or hook it here, and then take it up and hook it there, and now stretch it down over this. And that is one way. Like, I'll have to tell you one other thing about this, and it gets a little complicated. If you put elastic underneath here, you will have a Class 2 mechanic and be moving this jaw forward. As it moves this jaw down in this direction, it'll move it that way. Now, if you run it with a spring coming under here, this spring pushes this forward. The spring actually pushes the whole arch forward as it pulls this down. So the spring makes a class, in other words, if you've got a class 3, this is the way you're going to go. You can move the whole maxilla forward by pulling 2 impacted teeth down into the mouth will bring the buccal sides and the whole maxilla will come forward. And sometimes that's all you want to do. You move the maxilla forward, then your lower jaw can follow the maxilla, and you can get the head of the condyle off of this retrodiscal tissue simply by correcting 2 impacted teeth. Now that sounds way out, but it's true. And it will do that. You'll move this. If you got 2 impactions, whatever force you got on here, moving that tooth down, the force that brings this down brings this forward right like that, and it will change the position of the fossil, the head of the condyle back in the fossil. Now, I hope people don't think you're going to do this without using your head. I mean, you've got to be thinking to do that, but you can do some fantastic work if you know what you're doing with this. If it's class 2, and then you could bring this tooth in by pulling from the bottom, but I have to do that with the patient hooking it up. The patient doesn't have to do anything. Just wear it. Don't tear it up. Just wear it. And that's right. It has an effect on class 2 or class 3 cases, and also on the TMJ. And this old bull of orthodontics having no effect on the temporomandibular joint is as wrong as it can be. You can mess up the joint, or you can fix up the joint by how you move the maxilla and how the bottom arch follows the maxilla, and it's usually pushing back on that tissue that causes the problem. I've not ever had any problem advancing somebody's mandible as far as hurting the jaw joint, and that hasn't given any trouble at all. But you do something that makes the jaw go back, and if you've got a weak joint, you're going to have trouble with it. So let me see if we got anything else here to add to this before we shut up. Now here, if I'm going to do an elastic, then I put the elastic back here, stretch it out, and we've got, say, there's 4, 8, about 9 ounces of force on it. Now if I bend that wire, that elastic, and hook it to here, when the mouth is closed, it'll have 9 ounces of force on it. when they open the mouth, it'll have more. So this is bringing the jaw forward down here, and that has an effect also when you pull on that. It's pulling this down, is bringing this jaw forward. It pulls the head of the condyle, follows the jaw, and you get the condyle off of the retrodiscal tissue. And the pain can just literally go away, and I'll guarantee you that half the people doing orthodontics don't have any foggy idea of what's taking place up in the jaw joint while they're working on the teeth. And that's something everybody should try to learn if you possibly can. So let me see if we got anything else here that we can fuss at you about here. Alright, there's the elastic going to the inside of the mouth, and here it is on another case where we've got the elastic and the spring going. Now here we have this dental floss go through the spring down here, and we take this other leg and double it and send it through and come up and hook it so it's coming down this way. And I've got two strands of this wax dental floss, and I tie a knot in it and I pull on it, and as it slides, this spring will move up closer. And this is as far as you can stretch this spring over to here, but and whatever you're pulling here is so slick, it has virtually the same force pulling it down in that direction. And I don't want to scare people off from this, but you really ought to sit down and study it, and it can do marvels in bringing the impacted teeth into the mouth. That's the floss coming in. You're going to tie this knot, and now it's going to pull this toward this point right here, and then you'll have the force this way, pulling the denture, the whole upper arch in that direction as it pulls these teeth down here. And you pull the maxilla forward, the bottom jaw can follow it, and it helps the jaw joint back here. Or you can just pull the whole bottom jaw joint, the whole jaw forward, and the condyle goes right with the jaw, and that gets the pressure off of the retrodiscal tissue. And there's so many things, and it's such a ridiculous thing to say that moving the teeth around has no effect on the jaw joint. That just is so wrong, and I hope to God that we can straighten that out so that people know that that's what affects it. And I've had people put retainers in, and the bite deepens and the jaw joint starts hurting, and they don't, I mean, top-notch orthodontics didn't know what in the devil caused the pain, and said, well, here's 5 articles over here saying orthodontics has nothing to do with it, and that's a big lie. It does have stuff to do with it. So I'm going to go on here and let's see. Alright, so we slipped that in there. We tied that in a knot. Let's go back. You see, we tied the knot here. As I tie it, that sun moves up from the back side right here. And now the force that's on this spring coming out here, you've measured it, you know what it is. That's almost the same force as putting this down. As it pulls this down, the maxilla is being pulled forward, and so to bring this down, you're moving the maxilla teeth in a forward direction, and that pulls as you do that, then your bottom teeth fit into here, and it makes it possible for the lower jaw to come forward, so it interdigitates, and that brings the condyle forward and gets it off the jaw joint, so it can relieve the jaw joint at that time. So let's boom, we'll do the next one here. And there it is hooked up. And that's bringing that down in that same direction. Now that's the tooth there in front of it. If you want to change the way the root goes, put a little tip in that, and now the root will tend to go this way instead of that way. And it can bunch the roots together however you want to do. Now there the dental floss is coming in, and we'll take the two deals and we'll tie that together. And here we're pulling this up, and this one coming, we tie the knot in there, and it'll pull this spring up to here or wherever you want to stop it, and that'll have the same almost exact force. I'll be going in this direction, that is going over here in this direction here. Now there's very few people have looked at this when I put these videos out. And we ought to have everybody ought to know how to do this. If you're going to mess with impacted teeth, learn how to do this. And if you're going to mess with somebody's TMJ problem, or you can relieve a TMJ problem by correcting to impactions. It's amazing. Alright, there's coming in that way. There we decided to just put a bracket and tied the floss to that. And now we're using elastics and the spring in this case, right there. These are little TP hooks that you can stick through the hole that's in your brackets, and this is the end of it. And so I'm going to say goodbye, and if you are joined our group, we wish you would join it. In other words, we need as many people as we can get that are subscribers to our program, and I'll try to update you on as much as I can about the things, and hope you learn something from this. You can't help but learn something if you're going to deal with impactions. This is the best thing I know of to do it. So we'll say goodbye, and I'm going to close this out.